All right, AMD made some major announcements at Computex 2026. They just got off the stage. I'm not even sure if they actually announced any of these consumer products, so I'm going to do it for them because they pre-briefed me ahead of time. But I have to warn you, my blood is boiling, not over the products themselves. The products themselves look really, really exciting. It's the pricing that, once again, has absolutely crushed any hope for these things. Now, of course, we know this is AMD, so they will probably cut prices, but let's get into the details. They're going to announce 5800X3D, 7700X3D, the 9070 GRE graphics card, and new support for AMD overclocked memory on their Expo called ultra low latency. Let's jump into the details here. I don't have a script for this one. We're just going to punch through it as quickly as I can. Got the 5800X3D, it's the same CPU. We don't need to go through the specs on it. It's exactly the same as the old 5800X3D. But what I want to go over is when it's coming, June 25th, which is right after Prime Day, when we think Prime Day is going to happen. So, what's going on with that? Secondly, it's going to be $349. $349. Now, you might think, Jason, $349? Didn't it launch for $449? Yes, but it quickly went down in price, and I want to go back in time a little bit. This is Prime Day from 2023. So 3 years ago, you could get this CPU for $277. And what about the 5700X3D? It got down to $181. So I just have a big question, AMD. Why? I know prices have gone up. I know AI is eating all the production and everything, so things are going to cost more. How could it possibly cost that much more? I really want an explanation from somebody because I feel like massively overpriced. So this to me puts it out of the range of somebody who wants to do a brand new build, and it really only makes it available for in-socket upgraders. And even then, I think the value is somewhat questionable. Let's take a look at the 5800X3D, how it compares in the real world, because it's no longer the ultimate gaming CPU it was when it first launched. It's now competing with other DDR5 CPUs at this point. And if we take a look, here's every Ryzen 5 and 7 X3D CPU tested by TechSpot. I'll leave this link down in the video description. You can see it does okay, but it loses to the 7500X3D, 7600X3D. It basically performs like a Ryzen 7600X to 9600X CPU. The problem with that right now is that you can pick up the 7600X3D in the US. It was $229, went back up in price, but I suspect we're just outside of Prime Day right now. I suspect it's going to go back down so they can say lowest price in 30 days. And you can pick this up for $239. The 7500X3D is a little bit more expensive in the US, but I know in other markets, it's better priced than the 7600X3D, and it's certainly going to be better priced than the 5800X3D. So I went through and I actually did, like, what is it going to cost to put together a brand new build for a 5800X3D? If we just take kind of the cheapest cooler, Thermite Pearl Assassin for $35, that is really appropriate for it. I took the cheapest AM5 motherboard out there. That's the MSI Pro B550M VC, $80. And then we spent $120 on what is essentially the cheapest 16GB RAM kit. That's $584 for a new build. What would it cost for AM5 here? It would cost less, $521. And this platform is live, and this platform, as we'll talk about in just a moment, is going to be supported now through 2029 with future CPU upgrades, where the 5800X3D, your end of life, basically. And of course, for $60 more, which would bring us up to the same price of 5800X3D, I could build one of these, a 7600X3D. We did a great 7600X3D gaming PC build guide recently. I'll leave it linked down in the video description. And you get a more performant gaming PC with a future upgrade path to it, let alone, not to mention that right now at Newegg, I can still pick up for $459, $100 less, a combo like this. Now, this lacks a cooler, but that's like $20. So we'll throw another $20. And I get a nice little gaming mouse with it too. They always throw an extra little goodie in. Sometimes it's a cooler, sometimes it's an all-in-one liquid cooler. But still, for these kind of combo deals, now there is a possibility they might bring in the 5800X3D with some combo deals. That would be maybe more exciting about it, but I really think that price has to come down. All right, let's move on to AM5 announcements. There is a new X3D CPU, and they also announced that the Ryzen AM5 socket would be extended through support through 2029. They keep extending it every 2 years. They extend it by 2 years, basically. We suspect we're going to get Zen 6 on this. I still think it's going to be early 2027. Those are all leaks and rumors at this point. AMD hasn't confirmed anything. And then, of course, we suspect we'll also get Zen 7 on it, and it looks like they're laying the groundwork for that now through 2029. All right, let's move on to a CPU I'm not as upset about, but I'm still kind of mad about. That's the Ryzen 7 7700X3D processor. It's going to be available July 16th, which is after Prime Day, so we'll talk about whether or not you should even consider waiting for this thing. Similar to what we saw with the 5700X3D, it's a slightly downclocked version of the 7800X3D with the same amount of cache, the same amount of TDP, the same amount of cores to it, so that they can basically bin more silicon into this and they can sell it to you for a little bit more. Now, they are selling it for $329, which initially might say, hey, that's really, really exciting. $329 for almost 7800 X3D-like performance. The problem is AMD, some of us remember things, and I remember just last October Prime Day when $319 is what you could buy the 7800 X3D for. So I'm kind of like, I don't quite understand what's going on. Now, the 7800 X3D in 2026 has sold for like $360 up to almost $400 at times. 9850 X3D has come in and put some price pressure, and it has come down to about $360 again. But, you know, it's not that far off from basically the lowest price ever, the 7800 X3D, which is a little confusing. Now, the 7700 X3D, it's going to be basically 200 megahertz lower on the base clock, and then 500 megahertz lower on the boost clock. It's a similar cut to what we saw for the 5700 X3D. And if we look at the performance here, where do we expect the 7700 X3D to slot in? Probably between the 7600 X3D and the 7800 X3D. Now, I will say the 7600 X3D is clocked higher. However, 2 fewer cores, right? 4 fewer threads on it. I would expect it to come in right in between those two. So you're really kind of shaving that difference there. How much more performative is it going to be than the 7600 X3D, which again, I can pick up for $240 right now, right? $80 less or $90 less than you want to charge for it. Yeah, it's probably only going to be about 5% better in terms of overall performance. In terms of gaming, obviously, multi-threaded work, yes, it's going to have 8 cores, although they are slightly downclocked. All right, let's move on to the RX 9070 GRE 12GB GPU. This is a GPU that AMD launched last year in China, and just like with the 7900 GRE in the previous generation, they are bringing it to a global audience. There was some suspicion that maybe they'd add 16 gigs of RAM to this thing, but we're only going to get the 12 gig version. I think that's pretty obvious in 2026 with the RAM crisis going on right now. It comes out tomorrow, actually, June 1st, it'll be available, and it's starting at a stupid price of $549. We'll get back to that price in just a second. I'll tell you why. They're basically going to do what they always do. They're going to just kind of crush any enthusiasm for this product, and then they're going to cut the price anyway, so they get the worst of both worlds, because that's what Radeon typically does, and they're going back to their bad ways. Let's take a quick look at the spec difference. Video cards got a hold of the whole thing early, so we're going to use their table because it is correct. Look at the cores. That's the big thing. It's cut down about 25% over the 9070 XT. However, they are clocked higher than the 9070, so you don't quite lose as much. It is a 192-bit memory bus, so 18 gigabit per second memory on it, and 220 watts in terms of the TDP, which is the same TDP as the 9070. Now, AMD wants to compare this card to the 5060 Ti 16GB, which, yes, is $569 right now. And I know why they pulled that price, because it is a very favorable comparison. The 9070 GRE would be quite a bit faster. However, the problem with the 5060 Ti is that card has made no sense for quite a while, so you're comparing it to a product that makes no sense. What's the actual performance of the 9070 GRE compared to other GPUs out there? Well, compared to the 5070, it's actually about 10 to 15% slower than, I should say the 5070 is about 10 to 15% faster than the 9070 GRE. Yes, stats are fun, right? And it's not the greatest comparison. Yes, it crushes the 5060 Ti 16GB, but for $549, let's talk about that $549. What could you get instead? Well, right now, if you look at AMD Radeon cards, for $599, you can get a 9070. You can get a 9070 for $50 more, which is way faster, has 16 gigs of VRAM to it, and absolutely crushes things. In fact, here you go. Here's the Swift XFX model right now at Best Buy for $599. And this is before Prime Day. We're expecting some sales on this thing. And remember, this GPU is coming out tomorrow, June 1st, so it will be available during Prime Day. It will be interesting to see how much AMD cuts the price, and I suspect it will be pretty deep cuts to that price because it just makes no sense. Let's see versus NVIDIA. Right now, I can pick up a 5070 12GB, which is, again, 10 to 15% faster. Only has 12 gigs of VRAM, but does have DLSS 4, which has wider game support, even though I think it's an equal technology to FSR 4, which we'll talk about in just a second because AMD's made a little bit of an announcement there. But for $604, I can pick this up with a game, with the 007 game right now, which is a $70 value. So right now, this is like a $500 GPU. Oh wait, $539. That sounds familiar. Oh, it's $10 cheaper than AMD's GPU here, starting at $549, which is just totally insane. And I think AMD really needs to go back to the drawing board on this one. A couple other announcements AMD made. Number one, they're going to release a new version of AMD EXPO. This is DDR5 RAM. Auto overclocking. Now remember, in order to get the full rated speed of your RAM, you have to go in the BIOS and you got to turn on either the EXPO or XMP profiles, and all AM5 motherboards will use either one, either the Intel one or AMD's one. There has not been typically any performance difference at all measurable using the two different performance modes, either XMP or EXPO. However, it does look like AMD is now claiming that their new version of EXPO is going to be 4% faster than the old version. Nobody cares about what it's better than the non-OC version because nobody should use that. I recommend you go into your BIOS and you turn on either AMD EXPO or XMP. Yes, it's technically overclocking. However, it doesn't really void your warranty. At least that's been our experience for the last 10 or 15 years on this. 4% is fine as long as the memory that there's being introduced that will carry these profiles doesn't cost any more than the current memory, because I ain't paying any more for memory right now than I'm already paying just to get 4%. AMD also made some FSR 4 claims. Basically, they're saying 300 plus games today now use some version of FSR 4. I think it's majority is FSR 4, upscaling on them. 240 when they last announced the FSR 4.1. They kind of went through the history of this. And honestly, I'm going to give them some due here because this is quite impressive. If you told me when they launched FSR 4, just about a year ago or so, that we would have 300 plus games supported in today, I would say no way. Maybe 100, I even thought they were going to have a hard time hitting that 100 target by the end of 2025. So this is quite impressive, and I do want to give Radeon some props on this because they know that they needed a technology that's the equal of DLSS. Now, DLSS, to me, in terms of the upscaling versions, it looks very similar. When I'm gaming, I would never notice the difference between the two. And the real difference here is the support, the game support. Right now, DLSS is kind of on everything. FSR 4 needs to be on everything too, and I think AMD is doing a really good job with that. And finally, AMD reiterated what they already announced previously, that we've got FSR 4.1 coming to RX 7000 series cards in July and 6000 series at early 2027. I did a whole video on this. I won't give any more opinion on it other than, I guess, better late than never, but should have been about a year ago. And I'll link that down in the video description. All right, Mr. Bear is here with me to give some final thoughts on this. What do I think about this stuff, especially if you're looking to build a new gaming PC around Amazon Prime Day, possibly Black Friday this year. And we'll also talk about the impact on GPU prices for the 9070 GRE and why is it priced so high? Does that portend very bad things for GPU prices on the other graphics cards that are out there right now? Let's start off with, should you buy now or should you wait for these products? I don't think a single one of these products at the prices that they want to charge is worth waiting for. Honestly, for a lot of you out there who are holding out maybe on a Ryzen 3000, 2000 series CPU, it's almost going to cost as much to jump onto the AM5 platform as it is to get this silly 5800X3D CPU. So unless they cut the price on it, I'm going to recommend people jump onto AM5 with a future lifespan on it. So you are in, yes, it's going to cost you a little bit more money, but not that much more money. You saw that. You can get the CPU, the motherboard, and the RAM for almost the price, well, about $100 more than you can get the 5800 X3D. Just makes absolutely no sense because you could always sell your old gaming PC as well, right? Or you could sell those components and you could make the difference back pretty quickly there. So I just don't understand why these CPUs are so much. I think they will come down in price quickly, but by the time we get the 5800 X3D, it's going to be past Prime Day. So I certainly would not wait for it. And I would not wait for the 7700 X3. I don't know what they're thinking with this one. Hopefully we see that CPU come down in price. This is typically what AMD does. They price things too high. Everyone gets really mad at them and they hurt their brand reputation. And then they have to reduce the prices anyway when nobody buys stuff. So I don't know why they just don't start off at a more aggressive price point. It's really silly. In terms of the GPU, the 9070 GRE, it either is going to come down in price because that price makes absolutely no sense for it, or it possibly portends what Igor's lab article, I did a whole video on this recently, was saying that GPU prices are about to go right back up because the GPUs that we're buying right now were manufactured with cheaper components, and there's just a big backlog of them because people are not building or upgrading their gaming PCs because of the RAM crisis right now and SSD crisis. So those GPUs are not selling as fast, so that's why we still have kind of a glut of what are now getting cheaper GPUs as they kind of trend back towards MSRP on the AMD Radeon side. On the NVIDIA side, they're silly price except for the 5070. I really hate to think that that's the future here. I would recommend you buy a graphics card, and we will see, I guess, over Prime Day what happens to the GPU price for the RX 9070 GRE 12GB. I think it could be a wonderful GPU if it was priced closer to $499. Of course, that would also force them to reduce the 9060 XT 16GB price, which is sitting at $450 right now, and puts pressure on the whole stack. So what do you think about these announcements? Let me know down in the comments. Am I just crazy? Is this pricing actually justified and I'm just being too hard on AMD? I'm certainly open to that. I don't think that's the case, but let me know down in the comments what your thoughts on are. If you got value out of this video, please do give it a like. Of course, subscribe for more cool PC content. Check out what's going to happen on Amazon Prime Day. We take a look at prices right here on GPUs, CPUs, motherboards, and more. If you're thinking about building a gaming PC for Amazon Prime Day, check out this video, and we'll catch you on the next one.